This is an episode of Island Talk Story recorded on August 27, 2026. Today, we are examining the oral histories of Sam and Mary Cooke.
Right.
And these were recorded by the University of Hawaii at Manoa Center for Oral History. So we have this really meticulously detailed record of their lives.
Yeah.
And I want to pivot straight into Mary's early life on the island of Kauaʻi.
It's the best place to start, because that environment she grew up in really fundamentally shaped her worldview.
Yeah.
She was born in 1936, and she spent her early years on Kauaʻi. Her father was actually a civil engineer who became the manager of Grove Farm Plantation.
Okay, so she's totally immersed in this agricultural setting.
Exactly. The family lived in a house her grandfather built right across from the Kauaʻi Inn, so they were just completely surrounded by these working sugarcane fields.
And the imagery she gives in the oral history is so grounded. It's a very independent childhood. She talks about swimming in the agricultural irrigation ditches with her friends.
Right, the ones cutting right through the cane fields.
Yeah. And she was also super involved in the civic life of the town, like participating in fashion shows at the Lihui Union Church.
Mm-hmm.
But the detail that really stands out is when she was 12 years old, she actually begged her parents to let her enroll in a local Japanese sewing school.
Which is fascinating because, based on her description, this wasn't just some casual after-school club for basic needlepoint.
No.
She was being taught the incredibly meticulous art of drafting sewing patterns completely from scratch.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a highly technical, rigorous discipline. Drafting a pattern, you're translating a flat, two-dimensional material into a complex three-dimensional form that has to fit a body perfectly.
It's basically structural engineering for clothing.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because if your initial drafted pattern is off by even a tiny fraction of an inch, the whole structural integrity of the garment just fails.
Right.
And she mastered this so well that by 8th grade, when she was the May Queen at her school, she drafted the pattern for and sewed her own holoku. Yeah, her own traditional, formal Hawaiian gown just to wear for the ceremony.
Thinking about that, I kind of see an analogy there. Her early dedication to drafting those precise foundational patterns, it's exactly how she approached community organizing later in life.
Oh, absolutely.
When she was building these massive civic coalitions, she used that exact same mindset, drafting the strategic blueprints, aligning all the pieces. She understood that nothing lasts without a perfectly drafted pattern.
That is a great way to put it. She was so practical and methodical, which, makes the story of how she and Sam eventually got together so unexpected.
Right, because it was not a fairy tale.
No, it wasn't love at first sight at all. It was actually a pretty funny, winding road that started with a double date.
A double date where they weren't even dating each other.
Exactly. Mary went on this date with a guy named Pete Miner, and Sam was there, but he was with his girlfriend at the time, Sue Solomon.
And there's this great detail about a flower lei. Pete Miner, Mary's date, had bought a lei for her, but he inexplicably left it sitting in his hot car for the whole day.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So by the time he gives it to Mary, she described it as looking like a complete limp rag.
Just wilted and sad.
Completely thoughtless. Whereas Sam showed up for his date with a stunning, fresh red carnation lei for Sue.
Which, it's a minor detail on the surface, but it shows Sam's forethought and intentionality. And it's clear Sam was paying attention to Mary that night, because shortly after that double date, he actually asks Mary to go downtown with him to help him pick out a present for Sue.
Right, for his current girlfriend.
Yeah, and they're walking down the street looking in shop windows, and Sam just abruptly turns to Mary out of nowhere with this immense, unprompted confidence, and he says, "I bet I marry you someday."
Which is such a wild thing to say.
Yeah.
And Mary, being the deeply practical pattern maker, she obviously doesn't swoon. She's highly skeptical.
Yeah, she immediately challenges him. They officially make a $5 bet on it right there.
Which Mary noted was 2 full weeks of her high school allowance at the time. So that's a serious bet.
It was, and it stayed unsettled for a long time. They went their separate ways. Both ended up going to Cornell University in New York, but they still weren't together.
No. Mary was actually seriously dating an engineering student at Cornell, but the guy was totally consumed by his workload. He was desperately trying to finish writing his 5th-year paper.
Right. He had zero time for her.
Yeah, he was just too busy. So Mary calls up Sam just to ask if he wants to go horseback riding.
And that horseback ride was the actual catalyst. That's when the romance started, which eventually led to their marriage. Sam finally won his $5 bet 6 years later.
6 years.
Yeah. And that dynamic, his bold, visionary confidence to make that bet, paired with her grounded practicality, that became the yin-yang partnership that drove their massive preservation efforts later.
It's the perfect combination.
Right.
But if we want to understand Sam's lifelong drive to preserve Hawaiian heritage, we have to look at a miraculous event in his family's history.
Yes, the birth of his grandfather.
Right, Charles Montague Cooke Jr., who the family called Gigi.
Gigi's birth was a total medical crisis. He was born severely premature, weighing only 2.5 pounds. He was so small they had to cradle him in a shoebox.
And Western medicine at the time essentially just gave up.
They had no incubators, no solutions. It was generally a fatal situation in that era.
So the family turned to Kona, kahuna, lapaʻau.
Right, Kahaʻaina Naihe.
A master practitioner of traditional Hawaiian healing. She took over the care of this tiny infant and she actually rubbed him in kukui leaves.
She used that traditional botanical knowledge to stabilize his temperature, and against all odds, she saved his life.
I have to ask about this, though, because we're talking about the late 19th century. How rare was it for a wealthy, Western-descended family at that time to just bypass Western medicine and place the life of their heir entirely in the hands of a native Hawaiian healer?
It was exceptionally rare. I mean, Western institutions at the time typically marginalized traditional indigenous practices. But the family's desperation, combined with a deep underlying respect they already had for the culture, led them to Kahaʻaina Naihe.
The oral history does mention that Sam's mother was terrified of her piercing blue eyes at first.
Yeah, but that fear was completely eclipsed by gratitude. Because she succeeded where the doctors failed, the family honored her deeply. They treated her as a member of their own family for the rest of her life.
And that generational respect dictated how the family managed their own land later on, specifically the stones in their backyard in Mānoa Valley.
Exactly. When Gigi grew up, he commissioned the family estate, Kūaliʻi, on their property. The architects naturally wanted to build it on the highest point for the best view of the valley.
But Gigi refused, because building there would mean building directly on top of the Kūkaʻōʻō Heiau.
Right, and a heiau is a highly sacred, traditional Hawaiian place of worship. Kūkaʻō specifically is an agricultural heiau.
Which makes sense, because Mānoa Valley was historically this massive agricultural breadbasket, right?
Exactly, feeding Waikiki with taro and sweet potatoes. So this heiau was the spiritual and practical center for managing that fertility. Gigi understood its profound significance, so he forced the architects to build Kūaliʻi further back, sacrificing the view to protect the sacred site.
But over the decades, the property was subdivided, and that specific lot with the heiau was sold to a private developer.
Yeah, and it got completely swallowed up by banyan trees.
But Sam and Mary knew it was there, so when development threatened it, they used their personal funds to buy the lot back. And they didn't just clear the weeds. They hired master stonemason Billy Fields to meticulously restore it.
And Billy Fields used the traditional method of dry stacking the walls.
Right.
Which is so crucial because dry stacking means you don't use any modern concrete or mortar. You are fitting raw stones together using just gravity and balance.
And they had a strict rule, right? They strictly used only the original stones that had fallen on the site.
Yes. Because in Hawaiian culture, stones possess mana or spiritual energy. The original stones hold the history and prayers of that specific location. Bringing in foreign rocks or synthetic concrete would sever that connection.
Wow. So saving the heiau was this deeply personal family project. But protecting the broader environment, like Manoa Stream and the surrounding ridges, that required forces far beyond just the two of them.
These were collaborative community struggles.
Right, like Mary co-founded Mālama o Manoa, but she did it as an equal partner with Helena Kano.
Exactly. And the fight for Wa'ahila Ridge is the perfect example of this massive coalition.
That's where the electric company wanted to build those massive high-voltage power lines right up the ridge.
Yeah, and fighting a utility company takes a huge alliance. It involved neighborhood residents, legal experts, and crucially, Hawaiian cultural groups.
There's that incredible moment in the transcripts about Lenaʻalahine at the public hearing.
Oh yeah, the auditorium was rowdy, chaotic, just filled with tension. And Lenaʻalahine stood up and offered a pule, a traditional prayer.
And it completely hushed the room.
It instantly grounded everyone. It reminded them of the deep spiritual stakes of the land they were defending. It shifted the whole paradigm.
But alongside that incredible community passion, there are the hard logistics. Organizing thousands of people, navigating the legal system against a massive utility, it is incredibly expensive.
It's the reality of preservation. You have to pay the master masons, you have to fund the lawyers. The Wa'ahila Ridge legal battle was specifically sustained by a massive $250,000 grant from the Gerbaud Foundation.
Right, so when you look at it impartially, the community absolutely won these victories. But private philanthropy, foundation grants, and the Cooke's personal wealth were essential to actually buying the land and funding the legal battles.
It was a shared victory. Everyone brought different necessary tools to the table.